Well, good evening and welcome to the Portugal News Hour here on Good Evening Portugal with me, Carl Munson, and my special guest this evening, who is here to, communicate with us on the issues that we'll be talking. Well, not really issues; they are curiosities. The Paranormal Portugal, and I spelt it wrong, I can see, and I've called it Paranormal Portugal, which some people might think is Portuguese for paranormal. So I may have got away with it. Good evening to you, Jacqueline. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm keen to do this tonight because we put it off, as you're well aware. I think you and I have become friends in the last week or two, and just recently we were going to do this on the Good Morning Portugal live stream in the morning, and the morning we were going to look at Paranormal Portugal was when that article came through in the Portugal Resident about that poor little babe who was left on the steps of a church in Lisbon, and I felt compelled to talk more about that and the situation, the context, the circumstances in our society that led to that, rather than something as frivolous as UFOs in the Alentejo or curious palaces in Sintra or the entroncamento phenomenon. But I did promise it, so that's what we're doing tonight. And we'll look at that. And you're here to help me understand the human psyche. Is that okay? and have a look at why people are so fascinated by these things, and then we'll talk more specifically about you and your life here in Portugal. You're in Portugal, of course, as well. I believe over in Alcobaça way or Caldas way?
Near Caldas Terrenia.
Okay. Suitable. The place of the Queen, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Quite right.
You're a royal person.
I think so.
Straight.
Perfect. Okay, so if you're tuned in tonight and you're here to find out about Paranormal Portugal or Paranormal Portugal, as I described it earlier on, let's begin tonight with the entroncamento phenomenon. And feel free to add your comments as you're able to do on Facebook. It'll be great to hear from you to find out who's tuned in tonight, who you are, where you are, and what your view is on these things. And of course, when we talk more personally with Jacqueline later on, we'll also be talking about faith and spirituality and the role that might play in these crazy times that we're living in, especially in relation to the pandemic. So that will be part of the focus. So do stick around for that part of what I'm sure will be a very fascinating conversation. So let's first of all go to entroncamento, which in itself is quite a phenomenon, that name, entroncamento. When I first heard of that, I thought that sounds special. Entroncamento. It gets shortened to entronc, I think, by people, and it is made famous by the railway interchange that's there, as well as these things that came to my attention just recently. And this is Portugal no Mapa. Feel free to interrupt at any time, Jacqueline, but it's a translation, so it might be a bit quaint, some of this, not being a historic land and moreover not owing much to beauty. It's quite damned by faint praise there. The entroncamento phenomena put the city on the map for reasons other than its train station. In the middle of the 20th century, entroncamento gave an air of its grace. From the land of trains, it passed the land of phenomena. And that's where we have the spooky music. The fashion of phenomena. And I told you this is a slightly strange translation, so bear with on this. There was, especially in the middle of the last century, a journalistic tendency that passed through the sharing, through the available means, mostly newspapers, of certain rare phenomena. And they are known as phenoma, I think, in Portuguese. Events or animals or objects that, lacking a logical explanation, left their mouths open to those who knew them. Fashion seemed to have started in the United States. That's not a surprise. But soon other countries joined in. It even ended up working as a promotion for certain regions of the world that no one would have heard of otherwise. Yes, so certainly I think that's true of entroncamento. Apart from, of course, from the railway interchange there. Portugal had its dose, of course, but with a particularly, and the vast majority of strange episodes that were reported came from a recently developed land in the province of Ribatejo, which is absolutely beautiful more generally, which had little to say other than that it was at an intersection of rail lines which earned him the name entroncamento. So I suppose that is the coming together of lines is the beautiful romantic name or translation, literal translation of Entroncamento, driven by the will of a correspondent journalist from several national periodicals, especially the Diario Popular. And this, of course, was when papers were really big in people's lives. This is, excuse me, this is a chap, I'm giggling already. This is a chap called Eduardo Opi Brito, pictured and honored in the municipality with a street name. There he is. If I scroll back up, you will see him. There he is, Eduardo Brito, the wonderful journalist of that time. The phenomenos. Yeah, but in Portuguese, there's one less syllable, which throws me every time. I think it's fenomenos de entroncamento, which caused a sensation in the country and in the world. So many times, it was not just the journalists, but the locals themselves to make a real hunt for the unusual. This small piece of Portuguese land has compiled so many cases that it has been called Terra. Oh, here we go again. The Fenomenos. So the land of the phenomenon. So here are some examples now. The first case to be reported was the appearance of a blackbird, but of white color. So really, it's a white bird when we know that they're usually black, or if we're lucky, blue. Or isn't that a bluebird? Given the kickoff, many others followed, some stranger than others, but always with the same common denominator, singularity, I suppose, uniqueness. Now, let's see. A crow that spoke as if it were human, a ram with 4 horns instead of 2, a plant that gave tomatoes and potatoes at the same time. Now, that's a plant worth having. A tree.
Yes, I'd like to have one of those.
Yes, okay. So we'll see if there's one of those in the seed catalogue to this, or if we can get a cutting from somebody in Entroncamento. A tree that had 5 different types of fruit. We'll have one of those as well, yeah?
Yeah. Great.
Okay. A chicken egg that reached the weight of almost 1 kilo. Now, that is one omelette. I don't know if I would want to eat a kilo of chicken egg omelette, but it was also a chick with 3 legs, a fisherman who drew a partridge out of the water. Now we're beginning to sound a little bit biblical, aren't we? An olive tree from which the white olives were born, a man with 3 kidneys, a bullfighter who bit a bull. I think that could happen anywhere. A bean whose size exceeded 30 centimeters, a bean that exceeded 1 meter in length. Not sure if that's like a kidney bean or the whole pod, but even so, 1 meter long bean pod's pretty impressive. It's the sort of thing that Jack swapped his family cow for, really. These were some of the episodes observed that went public. Others were kept in the memory of the people of Entroncamento, not jumping to the pages of newspapers. So typically Portuguese, they kept the best ones to themselves. The house Carlotto currently sells items. There's a shop to this day which sells items with many illustrations of the phenomena which were witnessed. The portfolio included caps, aprons, bags, or baskets. So they might do mail order as well if you are so inclined. So it would appear there was a vogue for these things, and to this day, because of Eduardo Brito, they remain famous. But the vogue, I think, for these sort of curiosities has passed us by, maybe. But human fascination, I think, has stayed steady. But even Eduardo Brito himself confessed to feeling increasingly unmotivated when he got curiosity fatigue, I think, when he received anonymous letters from his countrymen telling that he was giving the land a bad name. Oh, I see. With all the talk about the phenomena, unjust criticism of a man wanted nothing more than to promote a site that I even read had little charm in the eyes of outsiders, and he, who moreover was from a branch. Make of that what you will. So that's our first sort of curiosity. So the first thing I would ask you, Jacqueline, on our chat this evening, and we've already got one scary emoticon from Janny in Belgium who's listening tonight, and also we have an hola, como estás? Eugene doing his best Portuguese from over there in Ireland. First question then, Jacqueline, what is it about human beings that makes them so fascinated in these sorts of things?
Well, I think that the sort of things we've been talking about now are just curiosities, really. How did that happen? How did we get a great big bean? But it's pretty handy, really, wasn't it? If you had a big family to feed, there were quite a lot of things in there that would be very useful that I quite like. But the sort of paranormal, the supernatural that people are always wanting to look into. I don't know if you're going to talk about that more.
Yeah.
But is basically built into us.
Mm-hmm.
We came, and I believe in a creator, so we came from a supernatural being that we were supposed to be connected with, and something went wrong at the beginning of the human society, but people have still got that, like it's almost a spiritual genetic search mechanism to get reconnected to what they know they ought to be. And I think the other thing is that we all long to have more power.
Yes.
In life, because there's such a victim mentality in the world anyway. It's very easy to be the victim, but so we're always looking for something to dig us outside ourselves. It's just as if, to me, that it's a very normal part of human life. I've said that at one stage, but I do now.
Okay, and I can see that. I mean, we know this, don't we? Even from the human love of Hollywood, for example, we love big stories, don't we? We want, and why would it be that we love these big stories? I think is for some sort of explanation, isn't it, or to make sense of things. Humans love stories so much, and in one of my favorite, and I've said it many times actually within this sort of context, is that I spoke to a storyteller once, and I said, "What is it about stories that are so fascinating?" It's the first thing children learn, really, isn't it? Is stories, and then as you grow up, it becomes a bit more sophisticated. So you go to the movies to see stories, or you go to the theatre, and of course, all our great works, religious works, spiritual works, are full of parables and stories. And this storyteller said, "Well, humans need to know what's going to happen next," and that, I think, is such a beautiful description of the human mind and the human urge. And also, of course, these stories can reflect back at us things that we would want in our lives or long for, and other things that we would want to shun and reject. I suppose that they are the grand teachings, aren't they? The big myths and legends that have existed for millennia and persist to this very day.
The amazing thing too is everybody loves the sort of battle between the good and the bad, and it doesn't feel right ever if the baddies win.
Yes, that's so true, and that's been a big disappointment to me actually in recent Hollywood history, because I think you knew where you stood, didn't you? In the 20th century, you kind of knew in the first bit of the 20th century, you knew where you stood with Hollywood, and they were doing the thing of like good needed to triumph over evil, and it had to be an art movie or a kind of left field movie or a weird movie if the baddies won, and that just became more and more popular, I think. But I think it still jars with people.
Yes, no, we don't really want the baddies to win.
No, we certainly don't. And looking at the triumph of good over evil here, possibly, Gary, who's tuned in tonight, chicken with three legs, what do they taste like? I don't know. I've never caught one. Very good, Gary. In there with a nice kind of dad joke, which I think will be very suitable in our new group. They're the Expat Man Cave, which we came up with today, where the fellas will be hanging out on a Friday evening at this sort of time. But back to the paranormal. Can we have a look at UFOs now and see if Portugal is popular place for UFO sightings? Are you happy to go there, Jacqueline?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So on your screen now is Portugal, and I've done a search. This goes back to 1900. Searches you see there on the screen: UFO search results between 1900, the 1st of September 1900, and to the current day. I don't know if anything's been spotted today, and I'm sure if anyone's watching, listening tonight, and they see a UFO, they will find that extra spooky. It struck me that you would see UFOs over the cereal fields of the Alentejo, sort of romantically. I would imagine that's where they are, but actually, rather predictably, the concentration of UFOs is over the major towns and cities of Lisbon, as you can see there, and up in the north, well, a few more in Coimbra, Aveiro, as you might expect, and they're in Porto. And I think that's probably true to form of UFOs. Castelo Branco, Central Portugal, there's a few as well. If we click on one, for example, it's quite nice, this little bit of software, and it tells you what was seen and where and on what date. So with UFOs then, what do you think's occurring there for people? Is it the same thing of looking up into the skies for inspiration or being taken by surprise? What do you think with UFOs? Thank you. Mrs. Evans just bought me a coffee.
I think quite a lot of things that we see are some sort of illusion that we've put that name on. We would like to see UFOs. I think that's one thing.
Yeah.
But I also think there are some people are more sensitive to the spiritual world, and that there are spirit beings all over the place.
Right. Okay.
I mean, the Bible talks about angels. I've seen angels. I think I told you last week or the week before, and it was only very fleeting. It wasn't like sort of you fancy opening the door and asking them in for dinner or anything like that. But I was I was just aware of these beings that were absolutely huge and had drawn swords in their hands. And if you have lived as I have part time in Africa, or I also spent some time in Papua New Guinea. I mean, there are demons all over the place. They definitely affect people, and I in my Christian walk, I've learned to study the Bible, and it talks about demonic spirits that can manifest and things like that into shapes and things that we can see.
Okay, so and that refers, of course, back to our earlier comments about the great human story of the triumph of good over evil.
Yes.
And how that might manifest sort of energetically, spiritually, and then ultimately physically.
Well, I think there is that life is that battle going on around us all the time.
Yes.
I mean, I understand it now from a scriptural point of view, and from a God point of view, I actually understand those things a lot better. So they're definitely there, but what people do see, I don't know whether they are seeing flying saucers or rockets. I mean, we also sort of rather hope, don't we, that we're going to be visited from another planet, or we're going to go off to another planet. Well, we've done that, haven't we? We've gone to the moon.
Why do you think that is? I mean, is it again the same thing, the wish for power, the wish to avoid things, the wish for something new? Again, yes, that is such a long-standing human urge, isn't it? To be somewhere else, rather than where they are now.
Yes, grass is greener possibly on the other side of the...
Yeah. Yes. So perhaps then UFOs are sort of decoded energies that we see around us, or in the night sky, for example. We have to find a way of understanding things, don't we? And I think since you mentioned the moon, then since we've been to the moon, and I'll say allegedly for those of people who struggle with that fact, I'm not going to say where I stand on that, but since we've been in the space age, as it were, since the 1950s, and that's characterized the time in human history, it would be understandable, wouldn't it, that people would decode what they see around them in a kind of space age way, hence the whole thing of UFOs.
Yes.
Because before, I suppose, in medieval times, if you look, nobody would have talked about a UFO, would they, or had the symbols that we've got for extraterrestrials and ET, and that's a made-up thing to do with our times, isn't it? It wouldn't have happened 500 years ago, I don't think.
No, I also think the human imagination, to a certain extent, works on something that we do know deeply.
Okay.
Because quite often things do, like, for instance, I saw as a child fictional space type of stories and films and things like that. But then it sort of starts to come about, and an awful lot of things that have actually been written about do then come into being. And I think, again, it's just, we probably know an awful lot more than we think we know.
Funny that. Yes, what we think about, we bring about, perhaps, and we do that.
We just bring those stories into a language that we can understand in the day that we live in.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense to me. I nearly said a hell of a lot of sense, but I'm going to avoid using that. On these such phenomenons, Fatima was born. So yes, of course. I made this point in the run up to this show, is that I've avoided talking about faith and spirituality and religion for obvious reasons, and we haven't avoided talking about politics, and that's got us into some hot water. But I'm happy to discuss things as long as we can do it in a respectful, open-minded, open-hearted way. I think we should discuss these sort of things, and it makes it makes no sense to not talk about religion in Portugal. Right? We're living in a deeply religious country, so it's only right to talk about spirituality and religion here, because otherwise it would just be misrepresenting our life and culture here. And Sarah makes the reference. Thank you for that, Sarah. Sarah like Tara. That's how I'm going to remember it. Sarah Ferreira has joined us tonight, saying that Fatima was born on a phenomenon, which of course is known around the world. It put Fatima on the map, didn't it? And also agrees with that journalist. If it wasn't for him, in Troncamento could do with some help. So they've got a lot to thank him for. So thank you, Sarah like Tara, for that input. And you've got a fan already, Jacqueline, as well. Rita Adonis is here. Hi, Rita. Good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Boa noite. What an inspiring woman already. There you go. I've already called you a queen, and now you're being called an inspiring.
Now.
Gary says, strange how the word God is one letter away from good, and the evil is one letter away from the devil. I'm not a religious person, but I do believe there was a Jesus, and he believed he was the Son of God. Most of the religious teachings are good rules for life, but they can be twisted and perverted by those who administer. Yeah, I think as my little daughter Minnie would say, double thumbs up here, Gary, and same from Jacqueline. You wanted to say something to that, Jacqueline?
I do, actually, because, a lot of, you can use the Bible in ways to sort of beat people up, which I think is terrific. To me, it's love letters, it's God's promises, and it tells me about him and what he wants to do for me, which is great that somebody wants to do something for me. And also, I'm completely sold, because he's the only person I know that can make things out of nothing. And, that was a really cool, trendy thing to be able to do. I'd like to be able to do that too. But, yes, now I've diverted into something. I've forgotten what I was going to say.
I'm always doing
that. There's only 3 rules for a Christian. And the first one is love God, love other people as you love yourself. So you have to love yourself. That's the same sort of saying that's used, isn't it, as do unto others.
Yep.
And love God. And to me, love of God is something that's grown in me. It didn't come about, I just was really taught that there was a God up there somewhere was out to get me. Sort of.
You were being naughty.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so my journey was rather different from that. So, but definitely. And
I would like to ask you more about that, but I feel I have to fulfill my promise on this
Yes,
the
please go.
Quinta da Regaleira, but not until we've had a comment from Rita again. I've had many strange experiences over time, but it was only at 25 years that I read the Bible and all started making sense. Okay, interesting. Do tell us more, Rita, about that. And what I'm discovering, I was baptized recently, and I've had I would call it a kind of odd relationship with the divine, with the universe, with God, whatever one might call it, whatever code words people use. And what I'm realizing is that on the one hand, it is a real button pusher for people, and that's why it's avoided as a conversation. But then on the other hand, so many people are secretly or quietly spiritual and or religious, and all you have to do is kind of scratch the surface like we've done tonight, and then Rita just comes forward like that. It wouldn't happen in any other context, would it? But it's like we've started a conversation, and then Rita shares a lovely thing with us like that this evening. So thank you, Rita, for doing that. Really appreciate it.
Well done, Rita.
So then finally on the paranormal, before we go properly into the spiritual, this is a remarkable place. The Palace of Mystery in Sintra. Sintra, a beautiful place. I don't know if you've been there, Jacqueline.
I have been through it, yes, but I haven't walked around it because I don't walk.
Oh, okay. All right.
One of these machines.
Oh, so you've got the not the electric chair. That's something else, isn't it? But the motorized chair, which in many parts of Portugal could, I think, be quite difficult.
Yes,
yes, yeah. So Quinta da Regaleira is a beautiful place that sits in a World Heritage protected landscape, being Sintra, located at the end of the historical centre of the town of Sintra, where thousands of tourists flock to the palace every year to admire its unique architecture. The 19th century Gothic mansion brings Gothic, Egyptian, Moorish and Renaissance features and is surrounded by some of the most beautiful gardens of Sintra. So well worth a visit by the sound of it. Along with attractive fountains, stunning underground tunnels and a series of hidden passages and caves, this eccentrically decorated palace is one of the most astonishing monuments of the Serra da Sintra and is definitely one you cannot miss. So why visit? Well, visiting Quinta da Regaleira or visiting Sintra in general is like entering a fairy tale. It is pretty it is pretty much the most fairy tale town you'll ever visit, and is surely one you cannot miss when visiting Portugal. People do compare it to Disneyland, and I think it's a real Disneyland, if you like, if that's not a contradiction. And look, this is an incredible part of its architecture on the screen there. At the Quinta da Regaleira, one of the most fascinating features is what lies beneath the ground, a pair of wells spiraling deep within the earth. The initiation well, or inverted tower as they call it, is one of the main attractions in Sintra. It deepens 27 meters below land. That's pretty deep, isn't it? We're talking about 100 feet, aren't we? And is accessed by a spiral staircase. There are several theories of meaning to this monument. Some say that it represents the initiation rite of masonry, or it symbolizes the circles of Dante's Inferno, while others think it refers to Earth as the womb. Take your pick there. This would have to be the most stunning well you will ever see, a mysterious place that you thought only existed in fairy tales. The well was never used as an ordinary well, and in fact, was not built to serve as a water source or water resource at all. It was actually built for secret ceremonial purposes, and has many tunnels that connect it to other monuments and caves around the park. Yep. Right at the very bottom, you will find tunnels with stone walls that connect to other sites, such as the Portal of the Guardians. My goodness. The Cascade Lake, the Imperfect. This is all sounding very biblical to me. And the Pit Cave in the east. Quinta da Regaleira is a breathtaking place to visit. The palace looks just as beautiful on the outside as on the inside, with its Gothic style split over 5 floors. Its architecture hides shapes and symbols that relate to alchemy, masonry, the Knights Templar, and the Rosicrucians. Another one of its main attractions is the enchanting gardens. The Regaleira Gardens are styled to represent the ancient secret order with hidden tunnels and concealed symbolism. So I think enough about that place to give you a sense of whether you would want to go there or not. Jacqueline, what vibes do you get about that place? Does it put shivers up your spine?
I don't like wells. I always feel uncomfortable around these wells. I don't know whether I lived in a 500-year-old house in England, and it had a well, and I had to get it sealed up because I was always terrified somebody would take the top off and fall down it, or I might fall down it. It's just they're only scary to me for that reason, really.
Okay. Do you get any? I don't know what you were thinking when I was reading that out, and this reference to sort of ancient ceremonies and so on. Do you get the feeling that they were protecting and upholding something wholesome and savoury, or as is the way of the human mind? Am I being, when I think, oh, that sounds a little bit off to me? What sense of were you getting of that place?
I don't like it because I don't like secret societies at all.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think, again, if I was to answer it in what is spoken of in the Bible, it says that the things that are done in the dark are, mischievous.
Yes.
And that when we bring things into the light, then it's and everybody can see. So it can apply to life as well, can't it? The things that we hide from people.
Yeah, absolutely.
But secret societies, they give me a very bad vibe, as they.
Yes, bad vibes. Me too. And I'm thinking, I'm agreeing with you completely there. Why keep it a secret? Now, in times of persecution, you can understand that, can't you? Why people's faith and their ceremonies and rituals will be kept secret. The Quakers, of course, persecuted, so they began to meet silently to avoid persecution. And still to this day, they meet in silence, don't they? Because and I think it's a great format, basically. But now, in this day and age, in open and free countries, I think people keep their beliefs secret because they're afraid of, not of persecution, but of ridicule. It's turned around now.
Well, I think perhaps there is actually a lot of persecution throughout the world, most of it in the Middle East and Far East, and communism, of course, actually just locks people up for being Christians. And but I mean, I think somebody told me the figures a few weeks ago that hundreds of thousands of Christians are being killed every day. So I think there is that.
Yes, for sure.
But also a lot of people, because they have a false idea really of who God is, they think that people who talk Christianity or talk religion or whatever it is, that they have this thing that perhaps they can't be themselves in front of because they'll be criticised. And I think it's more to do with that, really. So people keep quiet because if it's quite a lot of people are prepared to talk about God, but you talk about Jesus and there's a sort of comes down.
or tumbleweed, the tumbleweed moment.
And I don't know whether people feel they have to be different in front of you or whatever it is. I don't know, but that can only be if there's a pretend, really, sort of.
Yes.
I don't know how to describe it because I would call it religion, and I don't like religion.
Okay, well, we're going to go more into that now. Let's just check in with a few people who are sharing their comments with us. Hi, Mag. Good evening to you. Hi, all. Drove twice past Entroncamento today. You see, it still has the pulling power, Mag. You had to drive past twice. We'll stop by next time. Maybe get yourself some three-legged chicken if that's what they do in the barbecue shops there. It is such a wow place. I think Sarah's talking about the Sintra Palace there rather than Entroncamento, but she might be. And Rita says, I've never visited it for that same reason. Presumably, Rita, the secret society thing. And just finally, for now in the comments, paganism really interests me because it's firmly in connection with nature, spirituality, and respect for all and everything around us. we have lost certain abilities over the years that made us more aware and enlightened on many different levels. And so now we call it supernatural. Good point, Gary. Yeah, I suppose what we're out of touch with, we now refer to as the supernatural. Good point, sir. So yeah, Jacqueline, just to set the picture here, and you were saying, yeah, you know, the awkwardness of for some people of talking about God or their values, their faith, for the next 24 minutes at least, or for however long we feel like going on. No such control or embarrassment necessary. We're going to talk about you and your faith, and I want to set the scene because we met because you live in Portugal. We're sort of mutual friends on expatsportugal.com. That's how we got to meet each other. And then the more you've told me about yourself, the more fascinating it becomes. I referred to you, and you didn't seem to mind as an expat elder. So I think you're very valuable in our community, for starters.
Well, I'm 82, so I'm entitled to be called an elder, really.
Good. Okay. I'm glad I haven't caused any offence there. And I think, you know, there is a real, to me, there's a lack of elders in our culture, and that's a two-way thing, isn't it? You know, the elders, I guess, you would hope would be saying something profound and sharing a particular position on things. And also that requires some listening and respect. So it's a two-way street. And I think that communication has broken down a little bit. Absolutely delighted to have you on the Good Evening Portugal show tonight to talk from that perspective. But also about you've been in Portugal for some time now, and you've seen a few changes in this country, right?
I have indeed. I've been here for 16 years.
Okay.
I've had a house here. I came here with my husband, and he left, went to heaven. So my faith walk really, it has been. I think it is for everybody. It is a walk, you know, and it sort of increases as you go and as you learn. And I'm always learning. I'm learning every day. But it's been particularly important to me in Portugal because we got off to quite a bad start here. We really both felt led by God to come to Portugal. And it really felt we questioned it many times because a lot of things went wrong for us at the beginning. And I do love Portugal, and I love it that I'm still here and able to be here. And I love the people and the country, and it's just a great place to be. But it wasn't easy. One of the things was because I got really sick and ended up more or less immobile. And so various things, and we'd always intended to base ourselves here. And at the time we were traveling backwards and forwards to America and to South America. And that all stopped. So for a while it seemed like, well, really, why are we here, you know? Other than that it is a lovely place to be. And then I was fairly strong in my faith then. And I just want to say something about what faith is. You know, it's not sort of some airy-fairy belief in something. It's actually based on solid ground. Faith is actually acting on what you believe. So it's action. It's a taking action. And the reason that I have faith in God is because I've tried and tested him, you know, and I've developed a relationship with him. And when my husband died, which is now just over 8 years, I mean, it was just he wasn't sick. There was no lead up to it, and he just died. And I found, I mean, I was completely and utterly devastated. It just couldn't, I couldn't get out of bed. And then we had to deal with all the things. I don't know if anybody's experienced anyone dying in Portugal, but it's so different from the UK. Everything happens really, really quickly, and you have to deal with it. So what happened for me was I sort of lost all my strength, couldn't get out of bed, and I had a little book. I couldn't even hold the Bible, but I had this little book which had promises from the Bible, and I opened it and to try to get some sort of comfort or solace. And the first words that I read was that Jesus would be a husband to the widow. And I just said, well, you better get on with it now, Lord. You know, this is now. Don't delay. I need you. I need you. And I think that was really the start of an in-depth relationship for me, because there was a 2-year in the natural, a nightmare, in as much as we had a loan on our house. We had insurance that covered it, which never paid out. The salary that was paid to my husband, they took half of it back. So I was here with a debt, a house, quite a big house, unable to get about, because my husband had really been my carer as well, and loved doing it. You know, we had a wonderful relationship, and but by the 3rd year, my spiritual husband, if you like, had led me to what I needed to do to get the debt paid off, to manage to get around on my chair and learn how to do all the things that he'd done, really, and get the financial mess sorted out. It was the first time that I really started to understand that God actually is interested in our financial position, because a lot of sort of churchy type teaching seems to want to keep everybody poor, yes, except the institutions themselves.
Yeah, funny that.
And I don't want to be rude to the church, because I have great respect for the church, but generally speaking, both the Roman Catholic and the Anglican Church are very, very rich as a body, and yes, an awful lot of the attendees are very, very poor, and don't necessarily get the help they needed. And I didn't get it from anybody but Jesus. And so that's been a huge walk. And I live in quite a big house. It always comes through people. But, you know, there's been so many examples. I mean, my boiler broke down one day, which meant I didn't have any hot water. And somebody who I hadn't known before at all came to the door, and I just said to them, do you know anything about boilers? And he said, oh, yes. He said, I'm a boiler expert's called.
An engineer, yeah.
I've just poked a few things, and there it was, fired up. But that, you know, that's a small example of a great big steps that's happened. And so for me, Jesus is my best friend. You know, I talk to him every day, as I would talk to you. And it's always worked out somehow. And so that trust has been, that faith has been, I'm able to do what he says that I should do, because he gives me both the power and you know, just steps it. I can't really explain it any more than that.
But you explained it beautifully. It's lovely what you're saying, Jacqueline.
But then about, I don't do religious speak, you see, I don't think. But about the amazing thing that happened, the most recent, which I think will probably interest your viewers and could be so helpful to people, is that just after last Christmas and in the beginning of January, God said I should get a job.
Is that the Protestant work ethic? I know.
But what I felt was that there was going to be a big financial crisis come about.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was God speaking to me. And then I looked various things up in the Bible and found out really that everything that's going on now is really predicted. And so it was like a preparation for that. And so I thought, well, what can I do? It turned out that actually to learn how to do business online. And I've been learning 3 or 4 different streams of things. And when I say learning, it's been such a huge, huge effort because I was not technically minded. I'm still not. And one of the sort of organizations that I joined that I started to do training with, I mean, I cried. I actually cried buckets over this because I couldn't understand what anybody was talking about. And every time they used a technical term, I had to look it up on Google. I could do that. And so I'd get instructions as how to do this, 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 and this. But I've gradually got through it, and things are coming to fruition now. And I realised that even an 82-year-old who's never done internet marketing in their life can actually do quite a few different things. And it's going to help my family because a lot of my family have lost their jobs.
Yeah. That's remarkable. So you got a message to get a job from God, and the kind of practical steps you took with that were to study internet marketing.
Sorry?
So you were prompted by God to get a job, as you said, and the practical steps you took to do that were to become an internet marketer, which you now are.
Yes.
That's amazing. Yes. Brilliant. Okay, but I've got a few more comments because I want. Sorry.
Still early stages, but I am.
Okay. Amazing. Watch out, all you YouTube influencers. Jacqueline Mary Brown is an internet marketer as well, so just know who you're dealing with here. The Queen of Kaldashtarena on the web. But Benoit from Jeannie in Belgium. I actually wanted to go to sleep. It's an hour later in Belgium after a busy day. I'm glad I didn't because there's such a striking physical and spiritual resemblance between Jacqueline and my late grandmother Jean. I'd like to meet you sometime when we move to Portugal. I'm sure that'll be possible, Jeannie. And also, Rita says she'd like to meet you as well, with a little love heart there. Brilliant. So I think we've got a gathering already. It's sounding quite biblical. Sorry, this is a massive comment which is blocking you out for the moment, Jacqueline. There was a man, says Eugene, this sounds like a Bible story. There was a man we only knew in my family as the white fella due to his white beard, and he returned from the Klondike back in the day. When he came home, he challenged the local priest during mass and apparently said, I didn't see any of you in the Klondike when we, the workers, needed religious guidance, and walked out. Wow. From then on, he prayed in the field behind my grandmother's house every Sunday until he died. I always admired him because his belief did not require any guide. Fantastic story, Eugene, there. More things coming in. We all want to believe in the good, and that's the one commonality we all share. Whatever your religion, your faith takes you to, emphasizes that. It's what you do with your life that can make a real difference. Lovely lady, and totally respect your faith, says Gary. And Rita, where can I know your work? I'm amazed, says Rita. You've got your first client, maybe, or maybe you've got loads already, Jacqueline. I don't know exactly what it is you do. Rita wants to know more.
I've always had people physically visit my house, and I've what you might call discipled quite a few people. I've taken them through Bible courses and things like that, and just talk to them. And that still happens on a very small scale because we're not really, we've been in isolation for so long. But that's why I'm trying to get hold of all this technology, which you are now helping me with.
I am indeed. It is my pleasure. I feel it's a privilege to help you with it.
So that I can get out there and share. I'd like to, because I can't have groups in the house anymore, I'd like to have groups online. So that's where I'm heading. So maybe I'll meet some of the people that want to meet me in group somewhere or other. Group X when it materializes.
Oh, brilliant. Mucho respect to you, Dona Jacqueline. That's a lovely title for you here in Portugal, Dona Jacqueline. That's wonderful. And love to you both. Thank you, Polly. Polly Sullivan sending love to both of us there as well, Jacqueline. So the final thing, I imagine this could take a little while to articulate and unpack, but one of our promises tonight was to talk about faith within the context of the COVID pandemic. And when you and I first started talking together, one of the thoughts I had was, wow, it's interesting that there isn't much talk of faith or spirituality in relation to the pandemic. It's very scientific, very rational, and full of fear, isn't it? So could you give us a bit of a perspective from a faith point of view, a Christian point of view?
I think the term "do not fear" probably occurs in the Bible more than any other phrase. And there are a lot of there's a lot of help of protection from God. But I'm going to say something really controversial. Maybe I shouldn't say it.
Oh, watch out, everyone.
I do believe we have a COVID virus. I'm not saying it. However, I'm beginning to wonder how much the fear and the manipulation is a political move to control people. And I say that because, again, it's a prediction, a biblical prediction. But I was also, I've watched recently some interviews with Holocaust victims that have survived are still alive. And most of the things that before all those horrors happened and that control that Hitler had over people, there was fear stimulated all the time.
Yeah.
And it's the one way, either frighten them to death or starve them to death is the way that you can get people to do things. And so I think there's perhaps there's a political agenda being added to the virus problem. I'll just put it like that. It's not that there isn't a virus problem.
Yes. Yeah.
But God promises protection from that, so I don't feel afraid of it, although I'm supposed to be in the most vulnerable age group, and I only have apart from not having the use of my legs, I don't have full use of my lungs either. So, you know, if I went down that road in my head, I'd be dead. You know, if I didn't have the COVID, I'd die of fear, probably, of getting it.
Sorry to laugh, because that's not funny, but it's the way you tell them. It's the way you tell them. Fear not appears in the Bible 365 times. Thank you.
For every day.
Yes, and we need it, don't we? I think that's something you don't hear often in the media. It's not the business they're in, is it? Or politicians, for that matter. And it's really interesting what you say, Jacqueline, because that is the realm, as the media has it, or in common discourse of the conspiracy theorists, that there might be some manipulation going on. Now, I agree with you, and I don't see it as a conspiracy theory. I just see it as an understanding. This is where we started with the show tonight, wasn't it? Is like we're understanding human nature, and my understanding of human nature is that we have given up, or we appear to have given our power over to people and made them quite powerful in the amount of power they then have over us and decisions they can make that affect our lives. And that's all choices and kind of illusions in a way, isn't it? But the people we've given it to are very fearful people, and if I don't know the Portuguese politicians very well. I do like Marcelo in here in Portugal, because he strikes me as an elder and a balanced individual. But when I look into the eyes of the British politicians that I know better than I do Portuguese politicians, I see scared little boys. And what they are scared people, aren't they? And what scared people do is want to control other people for their own purposes, to create safety for themselves, to have money, because they think money is a route to being free of fear. And I guess anyone who's got rich knows that money doesn't stop you being afraid.
No, it doesn't. And it can't buy you health and things like. Well, it can to a certain extent, in that you can get good health treatment with money. But I mean, actually, money is really important.
For sure.
It's hugely important. And that might be another thing that people don't know, is actually the Bible talks about money more than anything else.
Even more than not fearing. It's be wealthy. Yeah.
God's promises are to prosper the works of your hands, and certainly done that for me. And that he wants us to be wealthy so that we can help other people.
Yes, of course.
It's got to have that. He doesn't like us to be greedy and to be hoarders, but he wants us to. I think it's every Christian's duty to make as much money as possible, actually. And I probably would get hung on, quartered, and thrown out of all sorts of religious institutions for saying that, but I don't care.
Brilliant. Rita says Zoom, and I think by that she means she is open to the idea of you appearing online and talking to groups of people. And actually, Jacqueline and I are working on that. I hope I'm not giving a secret away there, Jacqueline, but we are. Yeah, we are working on. We don't have secrets, like we were saying before. It's not a secret society. We're working on this. Delighted to share that with you. And yes, Rita, you're ahead of the game there. That's what we're hoping to do, because I've absolutely loved talking to you tonight, Jacqueline, in this context.
I love being here, and I so love your show because I listen to it every morning. I don't always listen to it at night time, but I must. I don't necessarily go to bed early, but I can sleep when I want to, or get up when I want to. So I'm often up in the night and
me too.
In the afternoon. So that's one of the advantages of living on your own. You can do what you like.
You could be a complete rebel, but nobody gets to see. Dona Jacqueline, you have a very good understanding of this virus problem. So approval from Belgium tonight. If there is a supreme being that I have to be judged by at the end of all of this, then I would like to meet him after a life lived on my own terms. However, that gas bar might take some explaining. This is the man cave that Gary has in his basement. Because I think it's okay to have fun too, isn't it, Jacqueline? This is
Absolutely. I think God's got a huge sense of humour. He must have, actually.
Well, exactly. To put up with us lot and tolerate us, a big sense of humour is required. On the job description, it's not desirable, it's essential. Polly says, we are being psychologically hurt, and fear does weaken our immune system. Keep an eye, take a Vitsi, and meditate to raise the vibration. Love will override the darkness. We need to go back to source energy, which is love. Define love. Beautiful, Polly. Thank you. I suspect you might agree with that, Jacqueline.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, fine. And does Donna Jacqueline know about Ministry of Freedom or Profit Accumulator? So a fellow internet marketer, by the sound of it there.
I'm not. No, I'm not familiar with Ministry of Freedom. It sounds pretty good. Let's be free.
They both sound good, Eugene. You have to PM. Oh, I'm so sorry. You made me laugh so much I can't speak, which might be a merciful thing. But I thank Eugene for that. Final word to you, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. The microphone, the floor is yours to say as you wish. In the closing comments tonight.
Well, I'm going to have a last word about God, really, and not, that if he made us, which I believe he did, and he made the universe, then he's got the sort of big picture that we haven't, and therefore he can probably give us a lot of sound advice. And that's all really. And I suppose if I was to pray, what I would pray was that people will find that sustaining comfort and love that I have, and find it perhaps earlier in life than I did, and that it will help them. And but I have every respect for people who have completely different beliefs. And I suppose the very last word is to say, you may not believe in a God, but he believes in you.
Thank you so much. I really look forward to speaking to you again soon, as I suspect the people gathered here tonight are looking forward to that moment too. Jacqueline, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been fun, hasn't it?
It really has. Yes. Bye for now. Can't wait till the next time. Boa noite a todos.